Hello, friends of Studio Brûlé. This is Steve Brûlé, and it's coffee time. Time to go over some of the stuff that's been going on in the world. And it's been a few weeks. Not because there's nothing to talk about, obviously. There's a huge amount to talk about. And today, we're going to talk about the increasing lockdown and removals of freedoms and the use of the vaccine. I have to be a little bit careful about what exactly I say. So there are some treatments of COVID, coronavirus that I'm not going to talk about, at least not live on YouTube. So if you haven't yet, sign up for Studio Brûlé on library.tv, formerly Library. It's now Odyssey.com. Check me out there. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm going to jump straight into it because there's a ton of stuff to talk about. And at first, let me point out an incidental incident of censorship. One of the viewers pointed out to me, sent me this, that the Esther Viller's book, The Manipulated Man, is now no longer available on Amazon. And I checked this out, and this is true. It has been removed from Amazon. If you don't know Esther Viller's book, try to get a copy of it any way you can. It's a really good book. It's funny, and it's enlightening, and it's irreverent as can be. And as you know today, there are a lot of things you can't say today without getting censored. Esther Viller, her book is in, I think, it was in the third edition. Now it's no longer available, and they've eliminated all of the associated reviews of the book when they removed it from availability. I don't know, maybe it's just not available in print. Maybe they didn't sell enough of them. I don't know, but I'm awfully suspicious because they are censoring really everything that is critical of the leftist feminist narrative. These people are in full control now. Let's move forward on this a little bit. And here it is here. The Manipulated Man. Last published edition was January 16th, 2009. I checked on my Kindle. I have a Kindle version. And my Kindle version is still on my Kindle. Janice and I, oddly enough, were talking about this exact topic about, I think, 6 or 8 months ago, maybe a year ago, that it's time to start collecting books, physical books. As much as we thought that this great era of digital technology, you can carry 1,000 books or 1,000,000 books in your Kindle and whatnot on your computer, unfortunately, I suspect they can remotely edit those books. So, and I wouldn't put it past them. We are into 1984, George Orwell's full revisionist history dystopia. So, do you have confidence that your digital books won't be remotely edited by places like Amazon? I don't have that confidence. Janice and I were talking that classic books, you should buy a physical copy of books you really want to be able to access to in their original version. This, Esther Viller's, no longer available. Let's move on. That's just a little tidbit to get us moving. COVID, 90% of patients treated with the new Israeli drug discharged in 5 days. I hope this doesn't get me completely deleted from YouTube, but this is a news headline in the link is in the description. I don't remember who published this, but there is a new drug. I'm not going to mention the names of the other drugs that some people say have been working and are legit. I'm not even going to read the published medical articles showing evidence of other drugs working because that got me put into YouTube jail, and if I get one more strike, they'll delete the whole channel. So I'm not going to mention those drugs. I'm just going to say that some people on the internet are talking about other drugs that work against treating coronavirus. This is a new one. Phase 2 trial for an Israeli COVID drug saw some 29 out of 30 patients, moderate to serious, recover within days. August 5th, 2021. Let's move forward here. This is from the article. Some 93% of 90 coronavirus serious patients, not just regular people. Remember that the average healthy person in a younger age group experiences little to no symptoms. The risk of it for the younger healthy group is as close to zero as most diseases will ever be. So, with a new drug, in several Greek hospitals, with a new drug developed by a team at Tel Aviv Sourasky Medical Center as part of the phase 2 trial, the treatment were discharged in 5 days or fewer. Let's read on. Now, that's all I captured out of that particular article, but I want to point out this other article of other drugs. Again, the links are all in the description here. You can read for yourself. These are published articles and published research reports in many cases. In this case, COVID-19 vaccines, the status and perspectives in delivery points of view. I'm not going to read what these medical researchers found about these other drugs, of which I'm not going to name because I don't want to arouse the anger of the YouTube censors. But this is the article. It's a medically published article, published December 24th, 2020. If you're interested in finding out what medical researchers are saying about other treatments than vaccines and their effectiveness against coronavirus, you can go and look for yourself. Hopefully that much won't get me eliminated from YouTube. So let's go on to the other topics. This is a worrying concern, folks, and it's the main topic of today's show. There is a rising resentment against people who don't want to take a vaccine that has not been approved. And I'll say this, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but according to the angry mob that's growing, who have accepted to participate in this global experimental vaccine program, especially the messenger RNA vaccines, we are being accused as being the problem. Remember, it is the elite who, without legal authority, locked down the entire world. They took emergency powers without debate, and then they locked us down, destroying the economy, taking away everybody's freedoms. And those of us who don't want to participate in their experimental treatment program are now being accused by the growing mobs as being the reason for not getting their freedoms back. This is the twisted insanity. And what worries me here is the willingness of people to believe in the elite who created the problem in the first place, to put their trust and faith in them, and not to stand in solidarity with people who want to preserve their own freedoms and the freedoms of the people, in fact, who are attacking them. So, let's read on. This person says, Chris says, I had a seizure yesterday, tried to schedule an appointment with a neurologist. Was told by a doctor I can't be a new patient unless I've been fully vaccinated. Imagine this. This is the direction the world is going. And this isn't even one of the more extreme examples of this kind of discrimination. This person says, imagine if you had HIV and a physician refused to see you because of the virus you carried. Would society say that that's okay? Of course it wouldn't. There's never been a virus. Well, there goes my... Hold on a second, I'll be right back because I have to fix this issue here. Okay, sorry about that, folks. There has never been an incident in the history of humanity, to my knowledge, in which it was acceptable at least not in modern times. Back in the old days, with lepers and things like that, and outcasts and people who were considered to be possessed by demons because they got sick, they weren't treated and they were outcast. But this is what we're going back to now. They would not have, no one would have, I mean, in fact, a physician would have been called to the mat for not treating a HIV patient. But today, they're being told it's the right thing to do. Who employs this physician? And finally, more than one fish in the sea. I don't know, what, did I miss something there? More than one fish in the sea. Anyways, let's move on. And here's a response that is really disturbing in the general public, and this is the majority response. This is what's really troublesome. This is why the tyrants who are in power are going to rise further and further in power. This is why I'm pessimistic. This is why I believe we're entering into 1,000 years of darkness. It is not that the elite suddenly want to control the entire world and enslave everyone. They've always wanted that since the beginning of time, since the beginning of history. But what is worrisome is that the mob growing wants that too. They want the elite, they want everybody to bow down in obeisance to the elite. And how do you fight a huge mob of the majority of your culture? That's a difficult problem. One way we do it is by talking about it like this. I encourage everybody to talk about it. Are your freedoms really worth giving up for an illusion of safety that puts the full power over your life into the hands of the elite around the world? Read this with me, will you? My family of 6 is all double vaccinated, and you know what happened? We lowered our risk of getting coronavirus. You lowered your risk, but you took on another risk of being part of an experimental vaccine, the results of which you will not know for up to a decade. As Robert Malone has pointed out, mRNA vaccines, their action can be slow and very long to reveal the deleterious side effects. As we discussed in a previous session, recently in July, research came out that showed that mRNA can write genetic code back to your original genome. As Robert Malone pointed out, the vaccine mRNA, the vaccine micro nanoparticles are being found in bone marrow. Bone marrow is where stem cells exist that create the blood cells in your body. Any mRNA that writes to a stem cell, and the theory has been shown to be true, can then recode your bone marrow stem cells, and in fact any other cells in your body. But the stem cells are the most worrisome because the stem cells create new cells. So this is a big problem. You say these people are convinced that being part of this experiment lowers your risk of getting the coronavirus. Maybe it does. What I've heard is that it lowers the potential seriousness of the outcome. But let's remember that most of these people making these claims are not in the risk group at all. In fact, their risk before the vaccine was already extraordinarily low. The risk of dying for a healthy person in their younger than 55, 60 years old is in the 0.00 something percent. And don't quote me on the exact number, but it is very, very low. In fact, it is so low that you should be worried more about slipping in the bathtub and hitting your head, which is a very common cause of death. And you should be more worried about falling as you get out of bed to pee in the night, which is also, surprisingly, a very common cause of death. But no, you're not worried about those things. You're not worried about walking down the side of a busy street and cars hitting you, or things flying off of trucks and banking you in the head, which can happen too. You're worried about an almost insignificant risk for you as a cohort of the low-risk group. So you've taken on an unnecessary risk, the unnecessary risk of not knowing for 3 to 10 years, according to Robert Malone, the inventor of mRNA vaccines in the first place, who says, and he has the experience and the knowledge to say this, to make this claim, that you may not know for 10 years and the results may be horrible. You've taken on that risk and you weren't informed about it, or even if you have been informed about it, you decided that that risk is less than the risk you have to coronavirus. I believe you're wrong. But I'm not saying I'm not saying to you don't take the vaccine. What this growing group is saying is that all of us who are concerned about that risk must take the vaccine. And as we will see, they are pushing forward vaccine passports that will basically kick you out of society. This is old term ghosting. This is you're becoming dead to society. You will not be able to participate in society. And in a modern society, that's almost as good as killing you. So let's read on. Here's another one. You don't want to get vaccinated. He, she doesn't want you as a patient. I don't see the problem. This is the mentality that's growing amongst us. People don't see the problem here. They don't know it. They don't see it this way, but this is in effect what they're doing. They want to be second-class citizens, slaves to the elite. Notice that the Obama birthday party proved beyond a shadow of any doubt for anyone who has one brain cell left in their head that the elite don't see themselves as needing to obey the rules. The rules of social distancing, the rules of masks, as the Obama birthday party proved beyond a shadow of a doubt, only applies to the work slave population. The elite don't follow those rules. They understand that there's no point to following the rules because the rules aren't about their protection. The rules are about controlling the work slave masses of the world and bringing the world into a one world government. And this passports, we're going to see, these vaccine passports are another step along the way of creating a one world government. Let's move on. I want to get through some of these screen caps quickly because the main guts of it is towards the end, but this is all part of it. It's important. Maxime Bernier says, it's official. There will be 2 categories of citizens in Quebec with different rights. Trudeau also wants to force federal workers to get the vaccine. The notions of equality before the law and control over your body are collapsing in our country, not just in Canada. Canada is ahead of the curve because Trudeau is a full-on, fully committed globalist, and he believes he's going to get a seat of power at the globalist table. So he is a sycophant to the super elite, and he's one of the Laurentian elite, as we call them in Canada, who control the country. Here's another one here. And if we don't vax as many people as possible, this is a response to Bernier's tweet here. What's the alternative? I'll wait. You're the reason this is happening. There they are, blaming people like Bernier who are concerned about the loss of freedoms. They're blaming people like Bernier for what Bernier is trying to fight against. It's a twisted logic, but there it is. They all expect everybody to get vaccinated. The alternative is freedom. And here, and as there should be, people who care about others and understand basic science versus those who don't. And that is the subject of this talk today. It is get vaccinated. It's for your own safety. And it's not to protect you so much from the coronavirus, but from the mob who would like to destroy you and remove every single human right that was fought and won for with rivers of blood over thousands of years. They are eliminating it in a matter of years. Of course, it's been a decade or two since they've started eliminating rights and freedoms, but this is coming to a head, and this coronavirus is an excuse being used to eliminate the remaining rights and freedoms that you think you have. And I would like to remind you, and everybody here, I'm sure everybody on this channel knows, that you only have the freedoms and rights that you are willing to defend. If you're not willing to defend them, you really don't have them. They will be removed, and then you will quite possibly lose the ability to defend them, and we'll talk about that. Why is there no such opposition about seat belts? They're equating seat belts to an experimental vaccine against which you will lose all freedoms if you don't take it. This is the mentality that is common and growing in our culture, in Western culture. Read from the top. Because vaccination status isn't protected class under the Charter. In the future, actually knowing about your protected rights what your protection rights are would be a good idea before you start complaining what your rights are being infringed. Apparently, this fellow doesn't believe that bodily integrity is or should be a right. How do you fight a mob who has this kind of mentality and are the majority of your culture? This is difficult. I'm welcome to hear ideas, but I think the one thing we still have right now, and it's being taken away from us as fast as possible through censorship. The one thing we do have is the freedom of speech. But again, I'm going to remind you that I'm going to be deleting this video after its live stream is finished, and it will be only available on Odyssey.com or Odyssey.tv. I forget them. Anyways, my Odyssey channel. So do look it up there. This is where I have to keep things, otherwise YouTube will censor it, although I think we can get away with it in the live stream itself. Remember a year ago when they called us conspiracy theorists for predicting this? Now they wonder why we fear their policies and where they are leading. We haven't reached the end of the slippery slope yet. He's absolutely right. We have not even remotely reached the end. The direction this is heading is the elimination of your freedoms that can be taken away by the elite at any time, and reducing of the world's population to work slaves. It's only a bad idea if for some reason you're not vaccinated. Just get vaccinated. If everyone gets vaccinated, we won't need a vaccine passport. I don't even know what to say to the complete stupidity of that comment. You really believe that if everyone gets vaccinated, then everything's going to go back to normal? They're just going to grant us our freedoms again. They're going to relinquish emergency powers, and they're going to stop pursuing a one-world government in which you are a work slave, and they own and control everything? That level of naivety, how do you counteract that? I don't know. This is crazy. And here, this fellow says, yeah, like when they require us a driver's license, and I am an inferior citizen because I want to drive without a license. He's equating, again, being reluctant to enter into an experimental vaccine program that can actually, theoretically, have the potential to recode your DNA through the mRNA process to needing a driver's license. I don't think these people have many brain cells. I don't think they ever have thought deeply. And this is a problem of our education system. None of these people really understand where the rights and freedoms that we enjoy today came from, how we got them, what philosophically they're based upon. This guy says, I belong to the category of citizens that is vaccinated and will not die of COVID. What about you? Well, I belong to the category of citizen that is not vaccinated and will not die from COVID either. Mike Tremblay says, there has always been two categories, caring and selfish. Again, they're dividing the world, the citizens, into people who care, therefore get vaccinated, and people who are selfish, therefore don't get vaccinated. This is a vilification. They are ramping up the dehumanization of anyone who resists the demands of the elite. The cases are rising, this fellow says. People have lost all perspective, entirely all perspective on what this coronavirus is. The elite have called it a pandemic, therefore everybody's calling it a pandemic. What is it a pandemic? Do you know that I don't know a single person who's died from coronavirus? I know quite a few people. Have not known one. In a pandemic, I ought to know at least somebody who died of the coronavirus. I ought to. And remember, the CDC and other organizations around the world were insisting that anyone who was tested with coronavirus at time of death be listed as coronavirus as the cause of death. So this is, to my knowledge, the first time that those in control of the message of the media are trying to create hysteria instead of trying to calm hysteria. Why? This requires an answer. And this person thinks it's fantastic, very good news that everybody should require a vaccine or be ostracized from society. And his brother says, or how about just get the vaccine? Seriously, how hard is this to figure out? You're not going to have much freedom over your body when you're dead in the morgue. The media has been so successful that people believe that you're almost inevitable to get coronavirus, number one, and if you get it, you're pretty much inevitable to die from it. Two lies. Two complete lies. But I'm guessing you already have the vax. You're just stoking tensions for attention. No. Who's stoking tensions for power is the elite, who have been propping this up as a existential threat to all of humanity since the beginning. They've propped up previously existential threats of climate change. And why? All of their existential threats that they try to whip up hysteria around point in one direction as a solution: a one world government in which the organizations of the one world government control everything you do, all of your freedom, or remove all of your freedoms. This is the common theme between all of the hysterical existential threats that the elite promote. And this guy says, this is great news. It's not two classes of citizens. Why should vaccinated people suffer because of irresponsible idiots? Notice here that just opting out of an experimental vaccine somehow is causing vaccinated people to suffer. How? Well, clearly he's blaming unvaccinated people for the fact that the elite have decided to keep you locked down and remove your freedoms. The elite. You don't want to get vaccinated, fine, stay home. In other words, punish those who resist. This is growing in every culture in the Western world, in every country in the Western world, this sentiment, with a couple of exceptions that I hope I touch on soon. Calling immunization records vaccine passports has been the biggest scam perpetrated by fascists like you recently. This does not create two-class systems, and there is nothing stopping you from being a decent human being and getting vaccinated. Being a decent human being and getting vaccinated. In other words, and this is a common sentiment, if you don't get vaccinated, you're not a decent human being. This is an angel's hairs away from, if you don't get vaccinated, you're not a human being. And this is the dehumanization process that every tyrannical regime in the history of humanity has used in order to grasp permanent totalitarian power by creating a dehumanized group to blame everything on and crush them. And if you think this is not going to happen again in our culture because we've defeated the Nazis or something like that, you don't understand humanity. Max, get the vaccines and climb down from your position. You are helping no one with your anti-vax rhetoric. It sounds sillier by the day. Find a more worthwhile topic to which defend freedoms and rights. I mean, think about that for a sec. Find a more worthwhile topic on which to defend freedoms and rights. This is the topic that the elite are using in order to eliminate all of your freedoms and rights. And you want Maxime Bernier and the rest of us to find a different topic, not the one they're actually using against us. Don't fight that one, the one that actually matters, the one that is actually eliminating your freedoms and rights. Find a different one. Something easier, softer, less controversial, that doesn't really attack your freedoms and rights. Cool. One group of citizens who cares about others and another group of selfish science deniers. Selfish science deniers. What's the problem? Make a stupid choice, reap the consequences. In other words, they're rationalizing and legitimizing their desire to dehumanize people who don't want to be part of the experimental vaccine. Let's be clear. The science says that this mRNA technology is not proven yet. There are numerous unknown risks that the inventor of mRNA vaccine pointed out and was canceled from social media for doing so. He correctly pointed out that we will not know the consequences of this mRNA technology for up to a decade, because these kinds of technologies, these kinds of molecules, mRNA molecules, they persist a long time and they have unknown actions, but they are biologically active even within your genome. And that takes a long time to happen. Yes, the vaccinated and the stupid. I mean, more dehumanization. I don't know if we have to go over too much more of this. Everybody, please get vaccinated against COVID. It's no joke. Do the right thing. Imagine if you just got a vaccine like the majority. This discussion would be over. Yeah. Imagine if a tyrannical group came into your country and just, said, well, get on your knees and submit to us and everything will be just fine. Give up all your guns. You need a pass to leave your house. You need a pass to get into the grocery store, to go to the gym. We'll give you the pass. Just get on your knees and obey. Yeah, just obey, and this discussion will be over. Is that the life we want? Is that what thousands, millions of people died fighting for? I'm sorry, but this is really depressing display of our culture, of the people in our culture. It is depressingly cowardly. It is depressingly defeatist. It is depressingly inhumane. It is. Francois, he says, our national COVID idiot, they called back Maxime Bernier. Do another anti-COVID rally so we can put you in jail again. Maxime Bernier was arrested for speaking. He's running for election in a political cycle, and yet he was arrested for speaking without permission in Manitoba, I believe it was. Businesses aren't obligated to serve you. Employers don't have to give you a job, and the government has a right to protect its employees. Enjoy the consequences of your actions. Oh, shut up, you drama queen. When things are a matter of life and death, isn't there any point where civil liberties may have to decrease temporarily until the problem is over? I fear that the ignorance and stupidity of the majority of people are the biggest risk in the West today. We have enjoyed such a long period of prosperity without any threats whatsoever significant to our freedoms that people have lost the idea of what your freedoms, how it defends your freedoms. It's all taken for granted now. And people like this believe we're just going to temporarily give up your freedoms. Temporarily. Like the Temporary Income Tax Act that's still with us today. Like the temporary measures of 9/11 that are still with us today. Like the 2 weeks to flatten the curve that is going on into its 600th day or more. This is not a temporary measure. The elite have been looking for ways to control the entire globe forever. And this is one of their techniques. Stop being so selfish and get vaccinated like the rest of us responsible citizens. This is so depressing, folks. It is equality before the law. Everybody who can get the vaccine has the same obligation to get the shot. Obligation to get an experimental shot. You should probably learn that what words mean before you run your dumb mouth and embarrassing yourself like this. I'm afraid I'm coming to the conclusion that there's an enormous cohort of humanity, the majority, who cannot be reached. They cannot be reasoned with. They don't care about their freedom. and they just care about being obedient to those in power. This is why we have tyrants rising. This is why we have a rising slave class again. And again, another one. Just make Quebec safe from the virus. Everybody, they want to be safe. They really have been sold the goods, and they're stupid enough to believe that just take the vaccine and give up your freedoms and you're going to be somehow safe. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's get on to the next, further on into this, a little bit deeper into this. Ian Rankin, he's I believe, a Liberal politician in Nova Scotia running for re-election. A Liberal government will be proactive in exploring a provincial vaccine certificate for going to restaurants, shops, gyms, and other businesses. Scotia Pass would allow you to attend events without fear, while not putting people's health at risk from dangerous COVID variants. This is the permanent introduction of a vaccine passport in the province of Nova Scotia in Canada. You will not be able to do anything in life in Nova Scotia without the COVID Nova Scotia Pass. I can't wait, and this is the response of the citizens. They really believe that this is going to keep them safe. Just looking out for your own welfare. If you believe the vaccine is going to protect you, getting the vaccine, they're not happy with that. That's not acceptable to them. They want a passport. They want to be forced to show their papers, to leave their front door. This, folks, the real danger here is not the elite. The real danger here is the unwillingness of the masses of people to protect their own freedoms, to put the priority on their own rights and freedoms. They are not willing to do that. And this is it. Read this. I can't wait to get my Nova Scotia vaccine certificate. How about a provincial flag, coat of arms, or a shot of a lighthouse? They want to feel that they are part of something. This is a natural human thing. You want to feel you're part of the group. And this is part of where this urge to just obey the elite comes from. She wants it. She wants to have to be able to show her papers. Here, good move. I believe that a vaccine certificate respects those that got vaccinated as well as those who did not. Then that reminds anti-vaxxers that each decision has impacts and their liberty is not greater than the liberty of others. Somehow, there's such illogic in this. There's absolutely no rational thinking here that the not accepting the vaccine somehow restricts the liberty of others. It doesn't, not in any way. You've seen the memes, which is quite correct. If the vaccine works, why are you worried about people who don't get it? And if the vaccine doesn't work, why are you getting it? One step closer to voting for you. This person considers this as a reason to vote for that person. Please make vaccines mandatory unless medically exempt for the residents, at least, in universities this fall. We have a small population and a huge university student population. Now think about this for a second. This is mandatory for students. The students are between 18 typically and 23, let's say. The risk of the coronavirus for this group is very, very close to zero. Zero. In fact, there is risk of the vaccine causing heart problems, specifically in young men in their teens, late teens. Young males between 18 and 23, that specific cohort, have I think it's a 4 to 5 times elevated risk of a heart problem due to one of these mRNA vaccines. And yet these people want to make it mandatory. There's not freedom in that. That is the opposite of freedom. This is the equivalent of branding the slaves, or using the slaves as guinea pigs in medical experiments against their will. Reading from the top, mandatory vaccination with no long-term safety data is wrong, and you know it. That's right. And here's a response to that. Do some research. The reason why they haven't closed the research on long-term data is only because they still are unsure how long it will last. No, that's not right. The vaccine is 100% safe. Please grow up. This is what we're dealing with, folks. And I'm going to say it this way. Even if the vaccines are 100% safe, which they are not, the mRNA vaccines need another 10 years of extensive research to demonstrate their safety. Because it's not only a new vaccine, it's a new vaccine technology which has not had any successful vaccine produced and spread yet. This is an experiment. But even if these vaccines are 100% safe, it does not justify making them mandatory. It does not justify taking away your freedom and your right to choose for your own body. Now, I'm not going to read this, just more of the same. This is war. This guy was going to fight it. That's great. I'm all behind that. But from reading the comments and the Twitter responses and comments in the articles and stuff like this, this attitude, the willing to fight for your freedoms, is very, very small percentage of the people. Hopefully it's enough. Hopefully it's enough. Now, speaking of the eliminations of freedoms and rights and travels, this is everywhere in the world at the same time. And there's multiple different excuses and reasons given for it. Now, China stops issuing new passports, imposes exit and entry controls in major crackdown on freedom of movement, August 10th, 2021. China is cracking down as if, well, it's easy for them to crack down. They just say so and it's done. They don't have to worry about anyone having freedoms in their country. But they're cracking down. Everybody is cracking down. Let's read from that little article. China has stopped issuing passports to its citizens and has imposed exit and entry controls on its nearly 1.4 billion population. The decision comes amid a recent surge in the Delta variant of COVID-19. But many commentators argue the move is instead the Chinese Communist Party using the pandemic as a pretext to curb freedom of movement. Notice that it's easy to accuse China of this. But that is exactly what's going on all around the world. All of the elite are using the pandemic, and it's not really a pandemic. They're using this coronavirus. They've usurped emergency powers, tyrannical powers, and then use those powers to whip up hysteria to get the people to believe that there's an existential threat to humanity around the world through this coronavirus. And the point is to get the emergency powers and then using it as a pretext to curb freedom of movement. It's easy to see it in China because we're already looking at China with critical eyes to begin with. But it's happening in every jurisdiction in the West. There's a pressure, there's an intent to use the excuse of this pandemic everywhere to curb your freedom of movement, to attack your freedoms everywhere. And it started before this pandemic, to be honest, you know that. It's with the guns rights crowd. They're attacking the Constitution of the U.S. The Constitution of the U.S. is the one ultimate paper that is standing in the way of the elite turning you into work slaves. They're attacking the Constitution for a reason, the freedom of speech. They're attacking your right to defend yourself using guns for a reason. Reading onward, the Chinese Entry and Exit Bureau confirmed publicly that the rules are in place, saying exit permits will only be issued for essential travel. Where have we heard that sentiment before? Everywhere in the West now. That you will need permits, and they will only be issued for essential travel. But we will need a permit for essential travel. That's going on in Canada, in Quebec, in Nova Scotia. The federal government if they believe they can get away with it, they will implement it right across the country. Spokesman Chen Jie said, "We will be implementing a strict approvals system with no permits for non-emergency or non-essential trips out of China to ensure public safety during the pandemic." Now really, does anybody think that this in China is about public safety? And if it's not about public safety in China, it's not about public safety in Canada, in the US, in Europe, anywhere. And yet, the elite are pushing it. Why? "I think the Chinese Entry-Exit Bureau's actions are in violation of laws protecting the basic rights of citizens," Tang told RFA. That's a Chinese fellow there, a journalist of some kind. "The pandemic is being used as a pretext. All around the world, it is being used as a pretext." Here, this is my tweet in response to that. "The whole world is moving in this direction. Although it took thousands of years and rivers of blood to win freedom for everyone, some among us want to throw it away in the cowardly name of safety. And they're willing to vilify anyone who refuses, who does not want to get the experimental vaccine. They're willing to dehumanize them, turn them into the targets and the reason for their losing their freedoms. Not getting vaccinated is not why the economies were destroyed. For people to not get vaccinated is not why businesses are shut down. It is not why anyone got the coronavirus in the first place. If the vaccine protects from, you believe the vaccine is a lower risk than the coronavirus, then by all means, I'm not standing in your way of you protecting yourself. But the vaccinated crowd are not satisfied with protecting themselves. They're angry at still being locked down, and they're blaming it on the non-vaccinated crowd. Now let's be clear. The reason they're locked down is because the elite want you to be locked down. Your so-called leaders want you to be locked down, and they're not wanting you to be locked down for your safety. You need to address that issue yourself, not with the unvaccinated people. Here, let's look at how far this is going, and this has got momentum behind it, folks. This is August 10th, that's yesterday. The cops in PM media. Cops forced to disclose personal social media accounts or risk being fired. So in other words, if you don't tell your employers where all about your social media, you could be fired for not telling them. That's an incredible loss of privacy. Now, what else does the White House said on July 16th? If you're banned for misinformation on one platform, you should be banned on all platforms. So what does that place the cops in if they get this through? The cops are forced to reveal their social media. And then if they're banned on any social media platform, they're banned on all of them. This is a complete cancellation of your ability to participate in the public square, in the public conversation. This is just more calls for censorships. After making the shocking admission that the federal government is flagging content for Facebook to censor yesterday's, this is back in July, House brief conference, Jen Psaki doubled down on the censorship rhetoric in today's press briefing by calling for users to be banned from all platforms if they post misinformation and dismissing concerns that the Biden administration is acting as big brother. Of course, misinformation is anything that disagrees with the official government narrative. How is that not censorship? The official government narrative in the coronavirus pandemic has swayed all over the map, from masks are useless to masks are important, to the need to the coronavirus coming from Wuhan, to the coronavirus not coming from Wuhan, to back to the coronavirus coming from Wuhan again. And under this regime, you can be censored and canceled on all platforms for speaking the truth. Let's be clear, the elite do not have a monopoly on the truth, and they do have an incentive to lie to you to preserve their power. And we know clearly throughout history that those in power always lie to you to preserve their power. They are the source of the majority of misinformation, and their motive is to stay in power or increase their power. And they want the power to cancel anyone who disagrees with them. Canada is far, far down the road on this already. With plan to regulate lawful but offensive tweets, Liberals continue moving closer to communist-style state censorship. This is July 17th, and this refers to the new legislation. In truly free and democratic countries, governments seek to defend freedom of speech. By contrast, authoritarian states, whether communist or fascist, seek to destroy freedom of speech. Again, these links are in the descriptions. I encourage you to read the whole article. Basically, the more a government has to hide and the more contempt they have for the public, the more they seek to suppress freedom of speech. In Pravda, Soviet Union, they called their main propaganda newspaper Pravda, which means truth. This is Orwellian. Orwell talked about this in great, great detail. And this is what Western political leaders want for us today. They want to shut us up because they want totalitarian power. Canada has already gone several big steps down that road. But it didn't matter because one of the first things the Bolsheviks did upon seizing power was to eliminate all potential media opposition and established a propaganda monopoly. Of course, the fascists in Germany did the same thing, as did the fascists in Italy at the time. The first big move of authoritarian states after seizing power is to create a unified and unchallenged propaganda machine. That they are doing today as we speak. Big tech is doing it. It's in league with government. The White House is holding hands with Facebook, and in Canada, Trudeau has reached out to both Facebook and Twitter, and they're creating laws that allow the government to dictate what must be eliminated from those platforms and what can be said, and the penalties are enormous. Proposed penalties in Canada are enormous. Lily, Trudeau's expensive gun control. This is a warning to the U.S. as well. There's no accident, and I'm going to show an article on this, that Canada is eliminating freedom of speech and pushing forward a gun control system at the same time. And it's no accident that the same pressures are being pushed in the United States and around the world. Trudeau's expensive gun control plans don't stop shootings or criminals. This is July 10th, 2021, 1 month ago. In the last election, Trudeau always made sure to visit a Toronto suburban riding when he wanted to talk about his plans for banning military-style assault weapons. Those have been banned for a year now, but shootings haven't gone down. Toronto, by the way, for any non-Canadians, is like New York City. It's the infested cesspool of liberalism in Canada. Trudeau's promised buyback guns from licensed gun owners was supposed to cost just $250 million. Then it was boosted to between $400 and $600 million. The Parliamentary Budget Office says the cost is more than triple the government's original estimate. And that's just a small part of the problem with that effort. All of this to say, this project could easily cost $1 billion or more for something that will not improve public safety. Shootings have gone up since Trudeau took office, as have the number of homicides involving guns. This is so easy to see. I mean, everyone knows, we've talked about this 1,000 times, that criminals don't get their guns legally. They don't want them traced. criminals are going to get guns if they want guns. It's honest, law-abiding citizens who would defend against criminals who will be denied the opportunity to have a gun when the criminal comes and puts one in their face or breaks into their house or any other number of circumstances. This is primarily due to criminals using handguns, and yet all of his gun control measures aren't aimed at thugs with handguns. He is focused on licensed gun owners with rifles. Honest, law-abiding citizens who are a threat both to criminals and to the government who would be criminals that want to take away your freedoms. Law-abiding citizens who want to defend their freedoms are a threat to a tyrannical government. And the American Constitution, the writers of the Constitution knew that. That's why they have the Second Amendment. The $756 million that Trudeau is planning to spend on buying guns from licensed law-abiding gun owners would be better spent focusing on the real problem, criminals. Duh, of course. Imagine what could be done in terms of stopping gun smuggling, as well as bolstering both enforcement and diversion programs in troubled neighborhoods impacted by gun violence. But nothing is being done in that. Nothing's been done there because that's not what they want. They are not aiming at controlling gun violence. They're aiming at controlling and removing guns from the hands of citizens who treasure their freedom. Let's read on. Trudeau isn't interested in solutions that might work, though. He's interested in using this issue for votes. Yeah. Right now, he even has a bill before Parliament that would reduce sentences for serious gun crimes, including smuggling and using a firearm in commission of a crime. That's pretty telling, that he is reducing sentences for serious gun crimes while taking the guns out of the hands of honest, law-abiding citizens who want to defend their freedoms and rights. What does that tell you? It tells you what all of us know already. No coincidence, and this was written July 13th by Wyatt Claypool. No coincidence the Liberals are trying to grab guns while taking away free speech. One of the best arguments that firearm rights in Canada are absolutely fundamental freedoms, and the government knows it, is the lockstep timing of the Liberals' newest attack on Canadian gun owners, Bill C-21, paired with the proposal for new legislation to undermine free speech in Canada, be it Bill C-36. You can't make this stuff up, folks. This could have come straight out of George Orwell's creation of the party in 1984. These are happening simultaneously in Canada, silencing the people and disarming them at the same time. How can so many people be so deeply asleep, be so ignorant, so unaware that what their freedom means and how it's taken away? Let's read on. Governments don't push out legislation in a random fashion, with each new bill having nothing to do with one another. Rather, everything proposed and passed around the same time tends to feed into the same immediate agenda. Clearly, the Liberals and their NDP allies, NDP is the Socialist Party of Canada, although the Liberals are a socialist party as well, don't be fooled by the name. Recent agenda since the beginning of 2020 has been the consolidation of power over the Canadian public, and that's right. That's why Trudeau gave $600 million of new funding to all the existing media in Canada, who the government deemed worthy. So now, if any of the mainstream medias who weren't under the CBC funding, of course, if they criticize the Liberal government then withdraws their funding. Therefore, they will not criticize the Liberal government, and they don't. We are seeing a full assault on Canadian rights and freedoms, and the government seems to know that undermining firearm rights just before hitting Canadians with the authoritarian speech regulations is a necessary step in their centralization of powers in the federal government. Over the last 40 years, we've seen an increasing disregard on behalf of the government when it comes to fundamental rights. Whether it's property rights, free speech, or the completely reasonable idea that you can defend yourself from violent attacks, the government seems to put a significant amount of effort into convincing people they shouldn't have any rights at all. Unfortunately, many Canadians now agree with the government on this topic, and we've seen this in their response to vaccination and vaccine passports. It is the people themselves who want to give up their rights and freedoms, and it is a small group of people who are willing to defend them. Let's hope that the voice of the few carries the day, or we will be entering in, as I've described before, the 1,000 years of darkness. If the elite gain total control of the whole world and one world government with all this censorship and disarming of the citizens going on, it will be in place for a very, very long time. MIT news. This is another concerning thing here. Let me sip my coffee a bit. This I came across while doing some other research. This is in December 18th, 2019, just before, the timing is very interesting. The research is going on at the same time. Just before the coronavirus came out, and just before the vaccines for the coronavirus come out, and just before the insistence that these vaccines be mandatory, the research showed, at MIT did, that storing medical information below the skin's surface, specialized dye delivered along with a vaccine, could enable on-patient storage of vaccination history. Does anybody remember what they put on the skin of the Jews in Nazi Germany? I believe it was a tattooed number. How is this different? They're storing your vaccination history on your skin. And then they're making vaccination mandatory. Mandatory vaccination, stored in the passport stored on your very skin. You're being branded because they do see you as cattle, and they're making it mandatory. Here, the authoritarian in charge at NIH, this is the US, unvaccinated people should be fired, banned from public places, barred from travel. August 3rd, 2021. And surprisingly, as we talked about, the majority of the public agree with this sentiment, and they want it. They don't see it coming back to hurt them. I don't even know sometimes I wonder why I bother talking about it anymore, because this just gets worse between each session to the next, each coffee session to the next. The process just continues on unabated. Maxime Bernier says, the central issue in politics today is, do we give up all our rights and freedoms so our enlightened elites can, quote, protect us from COVID, global warming, white supremacy, and transphobia? Or do we tell these fascist, communists, and globalist fearmongers to buzz off? I know what we should do, but I also see what the attitude of my fellow Canadians is. And they want to give up their rights and freedoms. They think it's the right thing to do. It's a level of ignorance and stupidity that I don't know how you can counteract it, but it is growing. And it is the majority, and it is something to be worried about. I would, in my fantasy, or in my desire, I'd like to see Maxime Bernier win the election. But the attitude of the majority of people in Canada, they see Maxime Bernier as a threat. The very guy who's standing up to protect their freedoms, they see him as the one that is preventing them from getting their lives back. They blame people like Maxime Bernier for the fact that the elite and the leaders like Trudeau refuse to give them their freedoms back. Maxime Bernier is trying to fight Trudeau and his crowd of elites on that. And yet, the people who will be enslaved want to oppose Maxime Bernier. You can't make this stuff up, folks. This is a very dangerous situation we're entering into here. Joe Rogan rips vaccine passports as moving U.S. closer to dictatorship. He's absolutely right. It is. Right around the world, not just the U.S., right around the world. Here, the University of Ottawa, Ottawa U, has just mandated vaccines for everyone on campus. This is for this September. This directive came directly from Ottawa Public Health. Here, CNBC says vaccine passports gain traction as Delta variant threatens travel rebound. August 11th, that's today. And here, a key point is that a survey found that 81.8% of Americans support the idea of vaccine passports, digital or physical proof of vaccination against COVID. They are blaming their fellow citizens for the fact that the elite took away their freedoms. They're not blaming the elite. They're afraid to place the blame where the blame really lies. Your freedoms are under attack by the elite in the world, not by your fellow citizens. Your fellow citizens are trying to exercise their freedoms. They're setting an example by saying, I don't want to be part of this experimental vaccine. And you're turning on them. This is a very bad situation, folks. Quebec, vaccine passport plan to start in September won't include retail stores. They're softening it a little bit, but it's a vaccine passport, and it spells the end of your freedom. August 10th, that's just yesterday. All details on European Union COVID-19 vaccine passport revealed. Here's what you need to know. This is July 2nd. They have a passport already in place, and here it is, digital green pass. Notice the green is meant to put the association with environmentalism and climate change in your mind, another existential threat. They're using these so-called existential threats to convince you to give up your freedom. Proof is in the insider. Proof of COVID-19 vaccination is required at some music venues, sports arenas, and airlines. These are the best vaccine passport apps to download. They're trying to tell you what apps to use, how you can be a good citizen by submitting to the passport. What we should be doing is boycotting those venues that demand a passport. But unfortunately, as the survey showed, almost 82% of Americans want the passport, the vaccine passport. And here's the photo they put up in the it's just a graphic. I don't think that's really the way it looks like. And this person, this is the one who wrote about that on July 20th, about what are the best apps for your vaccine passport. But listen what she has to say, and this was in the New York Times. The challenge right now is creating a document or app that is accepted around the world. This should be setting alarm bells off in everybody's mind, anybody who wants freedom. Around the world that protects privacy and is accessible to people regardless of their wealth and access to smartphones. They want a global passport. The elite have been pushing for this since World War I. Why would I need a vaccine passport or pass? As more people are inoculated, there will likely be aspects of public life in which only people who have been vaccinated are allowed to participate. There it is. And it will never end. It's not just this vaccine. It is now every vaccine. And it will be lots and lots of them, some of which we won't know their safety. And also, it will be expanded to other things. This is the wedge in the door to the social credit system that China already has. If you are then, they can easily include in this your cancellation vis-a-vis your misinformation. Let's imagine that you got the vaccine, not because you wanted the vaccine, because you got fed up and tired of all the restrictions and you accepted the vaccine so you could actually try to live your life. But you continued on social media expressing doubts about the vaccine. You talk about a friend of yours who had a heart attack or cancer directly related to the vaccine or some other illness. Now you're spreading misinformation. Now the government sees people spreading misinformation even after spreading, quote, misinformation about vaccines, or discouraging people from getting a vaccine, or encouraging people to speak up against the government-authorized information. Suddenly, you're now canceled on all social media. And where do you think they're going to include that cancellation? They will use your vaccine passport, and you will be canceled there too. This vaccine passport is just the toe in the door to totally control your life. Reading from the top, Dakota Gruner, Executive Director of ID 2020, a global public-private partnership, said that there are 3 scenarios regarding digital credentialing for the coronavirus response. The first, which is largely off the table, this is important. This is for, again, regarding credentials for your coronavirus safety or not. The first is largely off the table is the creation of immunity certificates. These are documents which would show that people have developed some kind of immunity to the virus. In other words, if you had, like me, if you had been exposed to coronavirus and you survived it and you have immunity in it, you would have an immunity certificate like anybody else. This is rejected. It's not good enough that you are immune to the virus by having survived it. That's not good enough, even though your immunity is probably stronger than the vaccination immunity. The second scenario is being able to prove you've tested negative for the virus, and the third is being able to show that you have been vaccinated. Notice that the vaccination passports imply that neither of the first two are acceptable to the elite. Being immune from having survived is not acceptable. Having been tested negative for the virus is not acceptable. The third and only one they are pursuing is the vaccine passport, even if the vaccine is not that effective. You have to have the vaccine passport. The last 2 scenarios, experts agree, are the most important for getting the travel industry going. Well, you know for sure, and they're not even hiding it, that this is not about your safety. This is about their ability to control you and me and the entire world. Ms. Gruner is one expert in a World Health Organization sponsored group tasked with establishing global standards for digital vaccination certificates. Global standards through the World Health Organization, a globalist organization, a feminist organization, run through the United Nations, a feminist organization. And I've talked about that in my video on feminism's role in a one-world government. Having to prove you've been vaccinated in order to participate in activities or enter certain countries is not a new concept. For decades, people traveling to some countries have had to prove that they've been vaccinated against diseases such as yellow fever, rubella, and cholera. Often, after being vaccinated, travelers received a signed stamped yellow card known as International Certificate for Vaccination or Prophylaxis, which the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will urge people to take on relevant trips. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, this is not for entering into the pub down the street from you, or your grocery store, or your gymnasium. This is for if you want to go, say, from the United States to the Congo on a risky trip in which something like yellow fever, rubella, and cholera is enormously prevalent, almost guaranteed that you catch it, and almost guaranteed that you have a very serious health risk, health response, possible death from it. They're not saying you can't leave your country. They're saying that you won't be admitted into their country to protect you from something that is almost guaranteed to kill you. The vaccine passport is far beyond that. Even before it's implemented, they're telling you it's going to, without it, you can't go into the gym. You can't go to an event. You can't leave your country, for instance, in China. You can't leave your country even if you have it in China. This is orders of magnitude different and more dangerous than previous similar things, and they're not that similar. And they were very specific, these were to very specific diseases, very dangerous diseases, in very specific areas of the world, not the whole world. But this is what they're doing now. They're rationalizing the complete elimination of our freedoms. They're not going to stop. So that's all I have for you today, folks. I think this is something we need to be aware of. And I don't know how to address it other than watch the development of it in where you live. And if necessary, you may have to change where you live. Because living amongst an 80–90% of public who are trying to dehumanize you because you don't want to be part of their experimental vaccine. They want to blame you for their loss of freedoms. That's a dangerous and a very unhealthy way to live. You shouldn't live in that kind of circumstance. You go move somewhere else if you have to. That's my view. So anyways, having said all that, I want to remind you to do something you love to do today. Do something you love to do every day, because it's your life, and you deserve to enjoy it every single day. So with that, I hope you join me again next time on Studio Burley, and look for me on Odyssey.com, because very shortly I will be deleting this video from YouTube, because one never knows what YouTube is going to decide is worth deleting the channel for. And my channel is marked. So with that, I hope to see you again next time on Coffee with Steve.